Two men whose entire job is ranking teenagers published their final lists before the draft in June. One of them had Cooper Williams, 31st in the class. The other had him 164th. Same player, same season. Same 18-year-old center from Calgary, playing the same games in Saskatoon, watched by both of them. 133 places between two professional opinions about one kid. Toronto took him 158th. 8 public lists exist on this player, and I lined all 8 of them up, because when the disagreement is that wide, the interesting question stops being who was right. It becomes what each of them was actually measuring. One ask, and it is the only one in this video. Most of the people watching this are not subscribed. The Montreal side of this channel does not have that problem. I would like to take that problem away from them. Subscribe. Here is the answer up front, because you should not have to wait for it. The 8 lists do not disagree about what Cooper Williams did. They agree completely on that. They disagree about which season of his to believe. At 16, he scored 57 points in 68 games as a rookie in the Western Hockey League. That was second in the entire league in rookie scoring, and it was the most points any Saskatoon rookie had put up in a quarter century. He also finished plus 19, second best on his own team, which is not something 16-year-olds usually manage. At 17, he scored 57 points again. 23 goals and 34 assists that time instead of 21 and 36, so the shape changed a little. The total did not move at all. That single fact is the entire draft. The lists that had him high were paying for what he did at 16. The lists that had him low were paying for the distance between 16 and 17, and that distance was 0. Because the draft is not a ranking of who is best right now. If it were, half of every first round would go to whoever had the most points in junior, and it never does. The draft is a bet on a slope. Clubs are trying to buy the direction a player is heading, and a flat line is the one thing scouting departments cannot price. Now go through the 8, because each one is a different room in the same building. Craig Button at TSN had him 31st, which means first round. Button has been doing this since before some of these prospects were born, and his lists tend to reward hockey sense over foot speed. On sense, Williams is genuinely good. He is the player who makes the pass that puts the other guy in a position to score, rather than the one who takes the shot himself. NHL Central Scouting, the league's own service, had him 50th among North American skaters. Central Scouting is worth understanding because it is the only one of the 8 that is not somebody's opinion column. It is a staff of full-time scouts employed by the league to produce one list every club receives, and it deliberately leans conservative. 50th from them is a real endorsement. The Hockey News had him 76th on one writer's board and 80th on another's. 2 people at the same magazine, 4 spots apart, which is what agreement looks like when it happens. Sportsnet had him 95th. Daily Faceoff had him 115th. Elite Prospects, whose database half of this sport runs on, had him 122nd. And McKeen's Hockey had him 164th, with the sentence that explains the whole gap. Their read was that he was almost exactly the same player at the end of the season that he had been at the start of it. That is the case against him, and it is a fair one. It is not a story about a scout being lazy. There is a second thing in the file, and it is physical. He is 6'1" and about 163 pounds. In a draft room, that is not an insult. It is a number with consequences. At that weight, the explosive first 3 strides that separate a middle 6 center from a fourth liner have nowhere to come from yet. The scouting consensus on him is not that he cannot skate. It is that he cannot accelerate, and acceleration is mostly built in a weight room over 2 winters. So 8 lists, 1 player, and everybody looking at a different piece of him. The part almost nobody outside Canada knows is that this was not the first draft of his life. It was the second. A Canadian kid in the West gets drafted twice. At 15, he goes through the Western Hockey League's own Prospects Draft, where the junior clubs pick the children they intend to develop. That is the draft that decides whether a teenager leaves home. In 2023, Saskatoon took Cooper Williams 41st overall in the second round. 41st, not first, not fifth. The junior league that had scouted him since he was 13 did not consider him a franchise child either. Then he arrived and immediately outproduced every Saskatoon rookie since the year 2000. I find that more interesting than any ranking, because it means the highest opinion anybody has ever held of this player came from watching him play, and the lowest ones came from watching him not improve fast enough. He has spent his entire career beating the expectation and then getting a new, higher expectation attached to him within a season. And it happened again in the room he changes in. Toronto drafted 2 Saskatoon Blades this year. Zach Olsen went 73rd in the third round. Then Montreal took Brayden Klimpke, another Blade, 117th. Williams sat through both of those and heard his own name 85 picks after his teammates. He also spent August of last year wearing a Canada jersey at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, which is the tournament that usually functions as the first public sorting of a draft class. Then he won a Telus Cup with the Calgary Buffaloes before any of this started. The resume is not thin, it is just flat. Here is my read on it, offered as opinion, and I think a fair number of you are going to want to argue with me. I do not think this was a steal, and I know that is the word the comments want. A steal implies the other 31 clubs made a mistake, and I do not believe they did. They priced a real risk correctly. A 163-pound center who did not improve between 16 and 17 is worth exactly a fifth-round pick. And anybody telling you Toronto robbed the league is skipping the part where the kid still has to add 15 pounds. What Toronto actually bought is something else, and it is the reason I like the pick. They bought time. Williams goes back to Saskatoon this season, then to the University of North Dakota in 2027-28, which is one of the 2 or 3 best development programs in North America. That is 2 more winters of strength work before anybody has to make a decision about him, and it costs the Maple Leafs nothing to wait. Where I will push back on my own side of the argument, a flat year at 17 is not automatically a ceiling. It is also what happens to a kid who spent the season being asked to play a role that does not suit him, and more than one evaluator said exactly that about how Saskatoon used him. If that reading is the right one, then the 57 points at 17 were scored with the handbrake on, and the third season is when you find out. So watch one number this year, and it is not his point total. Watch his listed weight when the Blades publish their roster in September. If it starts with a 1 and a 7, the entire scouting file on him is out of date, and the 5th round was theft after all. If he is still 163 pounds in October, then the 8 lists were arguing about the wrong thing. And Button was ranking a player who does not exist yet. Tell me where you land on this one. Is a center with 2 identical 57-point seasons a late-round bargain or a late-round warning? And would you rather your club drafted the 16-year-old version or the 17-year-old one? And answer the other one, because it is the question this whole video is really about. If 8 professional services can look at the same teenager and land 133 spots apart, how much of the draft